Hey friends, welcome back to Tips and Tricks. My name is Season Summers, and today we're going to continue with the third and final installation of What Goes Up Must Come Down, which is just talking about Etude number 5 and how to practice the upward lines versus the downward lines, and of course then those pesky up and down combinations. And today we're going to look at the final section. We divvied it up into thirds. So we're going to start with the pickup notes to measure 33 and go all the way to the end of the etude. So again, as a reminder, if you haven't watched the first two videos, I'll put a link to those in the description below so you can find them. I would suggest that you watch them in order. I spend a lot more time explaining these concepts in the first video. So if today is confusing, I would go back and watch the first video. That'll help a lot. Okay, the yellow lines, the yellow highlighted spots are our descending lines, the blue are the ascending lines, and then the purple is the back and the forth. And we're going to spend just a little bit of time on each of those today. So our upward lines are really quite short. They're all 2-note groupings this week, which I think is great because we can just really get to the point and practice it. So let's start with the first interval we have here, which is an A ascending up a fifth to an E. On different oboes, we've talked about the fact that tuning is going to be different depending on your reed and how you play and all those things, so many factors. But in general, I think I can safely say that that E is sharp on almost all oboes. The A can sometimes be a little bit flat, sometimes it's a great note, it just depends, but the E is pretty uniformly sharp. And sometimes it's so sharp that it may even register as an F on your oboe, which is horrifying, I know. So you need to know what the tuning tendencies are for these notes before we attempt to fix them. So if you don't have your oboe ready to go, grab that. Also grab a tuner. And I've got my tuner over here on the side next to my computer so I can glance at it as well. I want to make sure I'm doing what I'm asking you to do. And let's check the pitch of the A and the E. Again, you can pause the video if you want to do that without hearing me, or you can mute me for a second. I'm just going to play the A for a few seconds, then play the E for a few seconds, and I'm not going to try and be in tune. This is really important. Don't try to be perfect. Just play it and see where it is. We just want to know where it is. Okay? So do that for me. Here's the A. So that's what I expected. My A was pretty much in tune, and my E was about 20 cents sharp. And that's just what I know my oboe does. So if I don't try to fix it, then the interval is going to sound too far apart. So there's a couple of things I can do. First of all, I know that if a note is naturally 20 cents sharp on an instrument, I probably can't make it perfectly in tune all of the time, maybe not even most of the time, but I can make it close. And I don't want you to make it perfectly in tune and then have a really bad sound quality. So the goal will be to bring the pitch down as much as you can and still have a nice resonant sound. So keep that in mind. We're not shooting for perfection, okay? The other thing I can do is make sure my A is not flat. If anything, maybe it's just a hair sharp, but in tune is good, and maybe just a little bit high so that we can bring that interval more within the range of what it's expected to be. Okay, so we're going to play it again, thinking about whatever it is that you need to do for yours, which might be completely different to what I need to do. I'm going to play the A, and then when I go up to the E, I'm going to try and keep the voicing lower in my face so that it's not quite so sharp this time. And again, we don't need to be in sync to do this, so I will move my oboe when I'm going to play if you want to move at the same time as me, but no pressure to do that. So let's try it again and see if we can make it better. So for me, that was tremendously better. My A was perfectly in tune, and my E was like 5 cents sharp, which is completely acceptable. And it still sounded like an E. It didn't sound like really dull, like I was lipping it down so much that I could barely have a nice tone. And I would practice doing that long like we did. And then if you really want to hold yourself to an exacting standard, playing them short makes that even more difficult because we don't have time to fix it. So you really have to set everything up correctly, right away. Okay, so short is always more difficult, I think, for tuning because we just have less time to react. So you can mess around with that. You can also back up and get into it, maybe practicing landing on the A and see where it ends up when you're coming from something before it. You can also do the same thing in context and stopping on the E. So those are just some practice suggestions. The last thing I wanted to say about this is referencing measure 40. This is just an octave, but G's above the staff on the oboe are somewhat unpredictable. I would say the pitch is different on different oboes. Like this one's really quite different. So on my oboe, I know that the high G is sharp. But if you don't automatically know the answer to that question, again, you can use the same strategy we used in measure 34 and check those. That's probably the last thing someone's going to hear you play. So we really want to make sure that you have the information you need to make that sound good. It's also fairly soft, right? Because we're kind of drawing to an end. So that could make the tuning a little more difficult. So I would say start with just a comfortable normal volume, normal mezzo forte, let's say. And then once you know how to tune it, then you can start gradually trying to play it softer. And we add that extra element in. And again, that makes it a little harder to tune at the more extreme dynamic levels. Okay, here are our downward lines. They're very similar. If you take a look at them, the first one starts on a B, the second one starts on a D, and they both end on a B. So we're going to do the more extreme of the two, the second ones. So we're going to start on this high D. And I like, when I have a long line like this, I like to play the first note and play the last note and figure out what the difference is so that I can then have a better idea of how to get there when I'm playing all those notes in between. Okay, so we're going to do that. The high D will be higher in your face. I feel mine very much in my nasal cavity area. And the B for me is just kind of inside my mouth, like behind my teeth area. So pay attention to where you feel those. So try the notes as individuals, feeling, and you can also do the same thing we did on the previous slide with the tuner. Just check out where the pitch is and see where it is. So play those individually. D, and then the B. So for me, the tuning is very similar on those. I don't have to work very hard to make them in tune, but I do have to make sure that the voicing is correct. Otherwise, my high D will not come out as a high D. It'll come out as a lower harmonic, unfortunately. So keep that in mind. If the high D is scary for you and it's not coming out, it may be that you're just literally voicing or blowing or both a lower pitch than what you're fingering. That's very common with that note because it's just kind of finicky on the oboe. All right, we're not going to mess with playing that, but the next thing I would do is I would just play straight through and I would hold the B long to give yourself time to tune because, again, like we said, shorter notes are more difficult. So you can build up to playing that note short and staring at the tuner and just seeing, like, where am I landing? And then maybe if you need to make a change, you try it again and you try different things to see if you can get a better result. All right, we have one little donkey line. Donkey lines are what I refer to as the up and down because the oboe can sound kind of like a donkey braying. So measure 35. This one's not as bad as the ones that I have shown you in the previous two videos. But the main thing I want to point out is that we ascend up to a half whole note, a D, which is usually sharp on like most oboes. And then we descend down into this realm where we're not going to be sharp. Maybe we'll be a little bit flat. Maybe we'll be in tune. But also we are getting quite soft here. This is, I think, pianissimo. So that also affects tuning. So that might make it sound like you're sharp, possibly. So this one, again, I like to check tuning without thinking about dynamics at first, just to give me a baseline reading. And then after I've done that, then I'll add the dynamics in, see how that affected it. And then if I need to make some adjustments with the voicing, I can do that. So you can practice stopping on any of the notes and hold them in the context. Maybe you stop on the D and check how sharp am I on that. maybe you stop on the A sharp or the B and just check the tuning on those. So I'm just trying to give you lots of options, and I just want you to be able to know what you're dealing with, right? Are we up? Are we down? Are we both? Back and forth, right? So again, I've gone over these tricks in the last 2 videos, so I won't take time to do that today, but I just wanted to reinforce that it is really critical that you have a stable reed. If your reed won't jump an octave with like very minimal effort and be in tune, this stuff we're talking about is going to be so difficult for you. And I just really don't want anyone to feel frustrated when they're practicing this, especially when it's your reed's fault. And I know we're never supposed to say that, but sometimes that's real. Sometimes it's the reed. So please make sure you check your reed. And if you feel like you have to work incredibly hard to play just an octave in tune, it's probably your reed. Yeah. So just keep that in mind. Okay, guys, this is the end of the trilogy on the ups and the downs. So next Friday, I'll come out with a video on a new topic. If you have any requests or questions, please leave those in the comments below the video, and I can incorporate those in future videos. I would be happy to do that for you. Okay, I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.